James, you were talking about the idea of mushrooms not being an exclusive device for priests and for kings, and that it was open to all villagers, everyone who, to everyone that was part of the tribe.
Well, sometimes, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that all the time it was that way, but I am saying that mostly it was out in the open and that people knew about the mushrooms and they understood about the mushrooms. So it wasn't something that was kept secret or replaced by something else like a sacramental wafer or something. So one of our origins of Santa Claus, of course, comes from the shamanic tradition, and particularly in Siberia, the Siberian shaman, which used the mushroom, the Amanita muscaria. The shaman dressed in red and white to represent the mushroom, which we have Santa Claus that dresses in red and white. And some people think that Santa dressing in red and white was a complete thing that was made up by Coca-Cola in the 1930s, but this is not the case. Haddon Sundblom drew some Santa Clauses for Coca-Cola wearing red and white, and a lot of people think that's where it all came from. But, and by the way, we were talking about German and Norse tradition. Well, Haddon Sundblom was a German. He was an immigrant. But before him, nearly 100 years before him, was Thomas Nast, who also was a German immigrant and drew Santa Claus and colored Santa Claus wearing red and white as far back as at least 1860 and perhaps earlier than that. But Thomas Nast was also a political cartoonist and I believe quite interesting guy because he's the one that gave us a lot of the traditions, like the Laplanders have, of the reindeer and the yurt with the hole in the top for the shaman to enter. When the shaman enters the house of their intended healing, or whatever it is they're doing for their tribesperson, they come through an opening in the ceiling a lot of times because the yurts are covered with snow on the side, so it's really the only way to get in. But there was a lot of things that were associated with that, climbing down the central smokestack or the central shaft or the axis, and they associated the climbing the world tree, the shamanic climbing the world tree, with the shaman going in and out of the smoke hole opening in the roof. There are so many different associations. The reindeer also eat the mushrooms, and reindeer are real, and they're in Siberia. And the mushrooms are really highly prized by the reindeer. In fact, they'll knock you over to get them if you're not quick enough. And so there's a lot of associations with this type of thing. Now, of course, we can't talk about Christmas without understanding that truly it's a solar holiday, and that we wouldn't have Christmas if it wasn't for the precession of the equinoxes or the tilt of the Earth's axis. Of course, the Earth doesn't spin in a perfect line. It has a tilt, and the tilt makes the sun, as it goes from east to west, move from the north to the south during the course of the year.
Yes. And
so that means that our days get shorter and longer, while our nights get longer and shorter. And the winter solstice, or the origins of Christmas, is really the new year. And so it's important to understand that Christmas actually is the birth of the sun god, and it is the birth of the new year. So even though that we celebrate Christmas on December 25th, it's actually the new year, and there shouldn't be a difference between December 25th and December 31st, or our new year.
Okay, so because as we came across and became before we were a much agrarian civilization, we had to pay much more attention to our environment, and it's through the relation of the sun to us that marked the seasons, that marked the new year, but also, how did this become, in a sense, a holiday?
Well, because as early man started to observe the sun, he noticed that it started to get colder, and as days start to get shorter and nights get longer, and the sun seems to go further away and is further and further to the south. And if it keeps on going that way, of course, there's not going to be any day left, and night is going to be all there is.
Right.
So as it gets colder and colder, the days start getting shorter. Man starts to go, uh-oh, what's going on here? the leaves all start falling from the trees, and the whole world looks like it's about ready to die. If the sun continues going that way, we're going to be engulfed in darkness. Then all of a sudden, about the 21st of December, the sun stops in the sky. It doesn't proceed any further south, and it doesn't proceed any further north. According to Admiralty Maritime understanding, this is dead. You are dead in the water. It's dead in the air. It is lifeless, motionless. It has stopped. And this is where we get the 3 days of death before the rebirth. So the sun goes far in the south, and it stays in the exact same spot for 3 days, and then all of a sudden on the 25th of December, yay, the sun has moved up 1 degree, and the day has gotten a little bit longer, and now we know that the sun is reborn, and then the world is going to start coming back to life. As the sun moves up, we go into spring, and all the world comes back to life. So it's all the cycle of the sun. And as we proceed around the sun in our whirling orbit, our yearly orbit, we move the tilt points. We point at the sun, then we point away from the sun, depending on which direction, which side of the sun we're on. So we go through this yearly cycle, and because of the Earth's axis tilting, the days get longer and shorter. So we have what are called the equinoxes, which is the day is equal to the night, which we have 2 of those every year. Then we have the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year and the shortest night and the warmest period of the year. Then we have the winter solstice, which is the longest night and the shortest day. So this is the cycle of the world, of the sun. It's the cycle of the birth of the sun god, and this is why we celebrate Christmas when we do. And all of these gods that we're talking about that were metamorphosed or synthomorphized into Santa Claus are also solar deities and associated with the sun.
Yes.
Now, in occultic knowledge and in alchemy, we have the sun in the sky and we have the sun of the earth, or the unborn sun, the sun on the world, which is the mushroom itself. It's one of those secret knowledges of the dualistic things. It's the sun of the sun. So that's why the mushroom is associated with all these gods also, because the sun was part of the heavens. Of course, it's the sun in the sky, and mankind was always trying to connect himself with the heavens. And from the time early man was gaining the concept of things having spirits, which is called animism, where mankind starts to put spiritual understanding to all things, plants and animals and all this, and man started to want to get in contact with this force that man started to figure out was called nature. So the man discovered that these plants, certain plants all over the world, particularly mushrooms, were able to connect man with what he thought was the heavens.
Yes.
It would also facilitate an out-of-body experience. So man would take the mushrooms and leave his body and go into the heavens. But the interesting point of where man goes is worthy of note here, because when man travels into the stars, there's what's called the world axis, or the chimney in the stars. And it actually goes right through Pegasus, and it goes from the ecliptic right up to the North Pole, and below the ecliptic right down to the South Pole. So we have associated with this chimney in the heavens, these stars make this channel. This is also the Jacob's ladder. This is the ladder to the stars, and the ladder to the heavens, the stairway to heaven.
Interesting.
Now, also at the top of the ladder, right up by the North Pole, now you can imagine this ladder of stars going through the sky from all the way from the South Pole through the ecliptic all the way up to the North Pole. It goes right through Pegasus, and atop the ladder is Cepheus and Cassiopeia. These are 2 circumpolar stars that are the male and female, the god and goddess of the heavens. Cepheus was one of the Argonauts. Of course, he was looking for the golden fleece, which you study the Apples of Apollo, which is a really nice book that's out. But you'll find out that the fleece, the golden fleece, is again the mushroom. And apple means mushroom, and in fact, apple comes from Apollo, which actually meant mushroom. So that's why the book's called The Apples of Apollo. But sitting atop the chimney is Cepheus and Cassiopeia, which actually wind up being Hertha and Odin, or Wotan. And on down the line, they're Isis and Osiris, and right down the line, they're different male and female gods that sit atop the world axis, or the axis mundi, which is also the chimney.